Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave a comment, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after the video ends. The frontier is full of secrets, but none more haunting than this one. Picture a lone Apache woman walking across miles of unforgiving desert with nothing left but a shattered past and a desperate plea. Rejected by her people, hunted by men who fear her, burdened by a curse she never asked for, she comes to the cabin of a quiet rancher and says the words that will change both their lives forever. "No one wants me, I need a husband." And from that moment on, nothing in the high desert would ever be the same. Let's get started. The storm had barely settled when the rancher spotted her, standing alone near the cottonwoods, drenched, unmoving, as if carved from the very stone of the desert. Caleb Rowland slowed his horse, his instincts sharpening the way they always did when something didn't fit the landscape. Women didn't wander this stretch of country alone, not in the high desert where danger came from men, animals, and the land itself. She stood tall despite the rain pulling at her blanket, her eyes fixed on him with a steady intensity that felt less like fear and more like resolve. He felt the weight of the moment long before he reached her. As he drew closer, Caleb recognized her features, Apache proud, with the kind of quiet dignity that didn't vanish even after hardship. Her hair clung to her face, heavy with stormwater, yet she neither shivered nor stepped back when he dismounted. The river behind her hummed with the last of the rainfall, and the fading storm left the air smelling like wet earth and juniper. Caleb rested a hand near his holster out of habit, not threat. She watched him with calm certainty, as though she had been waiting. When she spoke, her voice carried strength tinted by exhaustion. "I need your help," she said, and her words didn't tremble, though something inside them felt fractured. Caleb expected her to ask for food, shelter, or medicine, common requests after a storm, but her gaze held something heavier, something he couldn't place. "My name is Naylan." Her eyes didn't drift. They locked onto his, as if testing whether he was worth telling the truth to. Caleb nodded slowly, giving his name in return. The wind quieted, and in that silence, she released the sentence that caught him harder than any bullet ever could. "I need a husband." For a moment the world seemed to still. The river softened to a whisper, the wind hesitated, and Caleb simply stared at her, unsure he heard correctly. Not because the request offended him, it didn't, but because she said it like a woman who had run out of every last door to knock on. He searched her face for jest or desperation, but there was only clarity. He asked her to explain, and she did so with the same blunt honesty. "My people have left, some taken, some scattered. I did not reach them in time. I am alone, and a woman alone in this land does not survive." Her words held truth he knew too well. The frontier showed mercy to no one, least of all to women without family or tribe. He invited her to his cabin, offering warmth and food. She hesitated only a breath before following, her steps quiet but purposeful. Inside, the fire crackled, the lantern hummed, and the small room filled with the scent of stew as Caleb cooked. She sat near the door, not touching anything, not relaxing, as though any moment she might need to flee. Only when he placed the bowl in front of her did she finally ease the blanket from her shoulders. They ate in silence at first. The storm outside faded into dripping branches and distant thunder. When she finally spoke again, her tone was steady, almost businesslike. "I have lost 2 husbands, one to death, one to choice. My people look for younger wives, women who can give many children. I am no longer young enough for them to want me, not skilled enough for widowers to choose me. I have nothing left in my hands to offer except work and loyalty." She paused, eyes dropping to the fire. "No one wants me. I need someone who will not turn me away." Caleb felt something shift in him at her confession, not pity, but recognition. Loneliness spoke a language he understood more fluently than he wished. He told her softly that she deserved more than a place offered from sympathy. Her head snapped up, eyes sharp with a quiet fire. "I do not want sympathy. I want survival. A husband is not only a man who shares a bed. He is someone who stands beside you, someone who keeps you from being swallowed by the world." Her voice faltered just enough to reveal how long she'd held the rest back. "I cannot survive alone anymore." Caleb set his spoon down, leaning back in his chair as he studied her. Naylan didn't resemble a woman begging, she resembled a warrior forced by circumstance to set down her spear. There was courage in that, a different kind of courage than facing a rifle or a raid. He told her gently that she wasn't disappearing, that as long as she stood before him, she still had strength. but she shook her head, not convinced. You do not know what follows me. You do not know what I carry. She lifted her eyes, and the raw vulnerability in them felt like a crack in armor she had worn for years. Before Caleb could respond, a sudden gust of wind pushed against the cabin door, rattling it in its frame. Naylin turned sharply toward the sound, her entire body tensing, her blanket slipping from one shoulder. Caleb saw it then, not just loneliness but fear, not the ordinary kind born from the harshness of the land. This was a fear that held memory and warning. He asked her quietly what she meant, what followed her, what she believed she carried that made her unworthy of being wanted. Naylin didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the dark window, as though expecting someone or something to appear. When she finally spoke, her voice had dropped to nearly a whisper, and the fire crackled loud enough to fill the spaces between her words. I did not leave my tribe by choice. I was driven out, not for crime, not for dishonor, for something else, something they said would bring misfortune. Her hands tightened around the blanket, something that has already taken 2 husbands from me. She inhaled tremblingly, steadying herself. That is why no one wants me. That is why I seek a man who will not run. Her eyes lifted to his, darker now, deeper, brimming with a truth she had not yet shared. Caleb held his breath without meaning to. The fire popped. The wind clawed at the walls. Naylin leaned forward slightly, her voice carrying the weight of a secret that had chased her across miles of dust and grief. You do not understand, rancher. I am not alone because I failed love. I am alone because they believe I am cursed. And before Caleb could respond, before he could decide whether the word curse belonged in the world of cattlemen and rifles, Naylin's eyes shifted toward the window again. Fear hardening into certainty, as though something out there had finally caught up to her. And that was when the knocking began. The knocking came soft at first, almost uncertain, the way a branch might brush against the wood when the wind shifted. But then it came again, firmer, deliberate, unmistakably human. Caleb rose slowly, one hand drifting toward the rifle propped beside the door. Naylin stayed seated, but her entire posture sharpened. She stared at the door as if she already knew what waited beyond it. Caleb motioned for her to stay back, though he doubted she needed the warning. He stepped quietly, boots grazing the worn floorboards, and held his breath as he reached the latch. When he opened the door, the night rushed in, cool and heavy. A tall man stood on the porch, wrapped in a dark coat, his hat dripping from the storm. Caleb recognized his face instantly. Elias Crowder, a rancher from the neighboring territory, a man known for trouble, for debts that never left his trail, and for a temper that only whiskey could calm. But tonight his eyes weren't wild, they were cold, calculating. Elias tipped his head, though there was nothing polite in the gesture. Even in, Roland, he said. Word is, you've taken in an Apache woman. Caleb stiffened. Word traveled fast in the frontier, but this was too fast. The storm hadn't even cleared. He kept his expression blank. I take in who I see fit to, Crowder. What business is it of yours? Elias stepped closer to the doorway, peering past Caleb into the cabin. His gaze landed on Naylin, and something ugly flickered across his face. She saw it too, her shoulders tensed, jaw tightening. Elias smirked, as if confirming something he'd already guessed. That one's cursed, Roland. Tribe cast her out. Men died around her. Bad things follow her. That's why nobody wants her. And I reckon you shouldn't either. Naylin closed her eyes briefly, as though the words struck a wound she'd been trying to keep closed. Caleb straightened, blocking the doorway with his body. You're on my land, Elias. You'll ride off now. Elias' smirk turned thin. Dangerous, or what? You'll shoot me over a woman who ain't even yours? Caleb didn't flinch. If I have to. Elias stared at him for a long moment, then spat into the mud and stepped back. This ain't over, Roland. You're a fool if you think she won't bring hell to your door. With that, he turned and disappeared into the dark, his horse kicking up wet dirt as he rode off. Caleb shut the door immediately and bolted it. When he turned, Naylin was already standing. He asked her what Elias meant, what truth existed in his accusations, if any. Naylin drew a slow breath, her voice steady but painful. They believe I carry death. My first husband died from a fever that swept the tribe. My second was killed in a raid. Some said it was chance. Others whispered I delivered misfortune. Enough whispering became truth. They told me the spirits had marked me, that if I stayed, more death would come. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I left to protect them, but fear follows faster than footsteps. Caleb stepped closer, his voice low. Do you believe it? Her answer came without hesitation. No, but they believe it, and men like Elias twist stories until they rot. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her. I did not come here to bring harm. I came because I had nowhere else to go. Caleb studied her in the firelight. He saw strength, sorrow, honesty, but nothing cursed, nothing dangerous. A woman burdened by loss was not a woman cursed. She was a woman abandoned by those too afraid to stand beside her. He told her she was safe here, but she shook her head. You saw his eyes. He won't stop. Men like him take what they want, and they fear what they cannot control. Caleb exhaled, packing briefly as he gathered his thoughts. The frontier was full of threats, but some threats carried intention. Elias wasn't warning him, he was hunting something. Maybe Naylan, maybe the story of the curse, maybe the power of possessing someone the tribe had cast out. Whatever it wasn't going to disappear on its own. Caleb walked back to her, voice steady with conviction. You're not cursed, and you're not alone anymore. I'll stand with you. She looked up at him, eyes shining with disbelief. Why, you owe me nothing. Caleb answered quietly, maybe I do. Maybe I owe both of us a chance not to live the rest of our lives alone. The confession hung in the air longer than the echoes of Elias' warning. Naylan's hands trembled slightly, not in fear, but in something deeper, softer, something she hadn't felt in years. Before she could speak, a distant gunshot cracked through the night. Both of them froze. Caleb grabbed his rifle, motioning for her to stay behind him. Another shot rang out, closer this time. The horses in the corral stirred restlessly, hooves pounding against the wet earth. Elias hadn't gone far, and he wasn't alone. Voices drifted on the wind, 3, maybe 4 men, drunk on arrogance and the thrill of nighttime violence. Caleb moved to the window, peering through the shadows. Lanterns bobbed along the edge of his property line. They were spreading out, circling. Naylan stepped beside him, her voice a whisper. They want me. Caleb clenched his jaw. They won't get you. He blew out the lanterns to darken the cabin. The only light came from the fire, casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, boots crunched through the wet brush. Someone laughed. Someone else muttered an order. Caleb knew the land better than anyone. He could defend it, but not with Naylan unprotected inside. He turned to her. There's a trapdoor beneath the rug. Storage cellar. Go down there and stay quiet. She shook her head fiercely. I will not hide while you fight for me. He took her hands, gripping them tightly. This isn't about fear. It's about staying alive. Let me handle them, trust me. Her breath trembled, but she nodded and slipped into the cellar just as the first rifle cracked through the window, shattering glass and spraying splinters across the room. Caleb ducked behind the table and fired back, hitting one of the lanterns outside and plunging half the yard into darkness. The men cursed, stumbling blindly. Caleb used the brief confusion to slip out the back door, circling the cabin. He spotted Elias near the corral, gun raised. Caleb aimed, but before he could fire, Elias shouted into the night. Give her to us, Roland. She's cursed. She ain't worth dying for. Caleb's voice thundered back. Maybe not to you, but she's worth fighting for. The standoff lasted only seconds, but the tension stretched like barbed wire. Elias aimed at the cabin, preparing to shoot again, but Caleb fired first. The bullet struck Elias' shoulder, sending him spinning into the mud. His men panicked, scattering like coyotes caught in a trap. Within minutes, the yard was empty except for Elias' groaning form. Caleb approached him, rifle still leveled. Elias glared, pain twisting his face. She'll bring death to you too, he spat. Mark my words. Caleb lowered the rifle just enough to speak clearly. The only curse out here is the men who believe in one. By dawn, Elias had dragged himself away, and the land finally grew quiet again. Caleb returned to the cabin, lifting the trapdoor. Naylan climbed out, eyes wide, searching his face for wounds. When she saw he was unharmed, her breath collapsed into relief. You should not have risked your life for me, she whispered. He smiled faintly. I didn't risk it. I chose it. A silence settled between them, heavy, warm, undeniable. Naylan stepped closer. You stood with me when no one else did. Caleb met her gaze. And I'll keep standing if you'll stay. She touched his hand softly, a gesture filled with both gratitude and something deeper. Then I will stay. And in that moment, in the quiet aftermath of violence and fear, the rancher and the woman once deemed unwanted realized neither of them had been seeking a husband or a wife. They had been seeking a place to belong, a place to stop running, a place where loneliness finally loosened its grip. They found it in each other. And the desert, for the first time in years, felt a little less empty.